Hey there everyone, I'm ShuffleCat and welcome to Shuffle Showcase. This replay here, I've been playing Harbinger quite a bit, and this is from the standard queue. I've been playing Harbinger a little bit, kind of just to work on the mind games that are inherent with his kind of really long cast time on the Shadow Bolt. You can see the cast time is 1.1 seconds long, and I was trying to experiment a little bit with how you can force outs using just one particular cooldown. Unfortunately, that Seeker, he was having none of that. He wasn't using his illusion when I wanted him to. So you see there, I was using my Nether Shift in order to do a little bit of damage to him while avoiding damage from the Igniter. That was a little bit weird. I think my space was bugging out a little bit. And the main point about Harbinger, I suppose, is that you space in and then you Nether Shift out. And that kind of, it puts you into a good situation for dealing damage, of course, and then, of course, escaping. And just a minute ago, you saw me use Nether Shift, and then I didn't escape. And you saw I took a little bit of damage from that. And that was a little bit unnecessary. If I would have moved farther away, that wouldn't have happened. And also, right there, you saw where I didn't have any ability to escape. My space was on cooldown, and so was my Nether Shift. So when the double ultimate happened right there, I had nothing to do in order to counter it. So that's why you always want to save one in order to escape. That's why you space in order to put the, I believe it's called hemorrhage. Yes, it is. You put hemorrhage on someone and then you Nether Shift out. And I believe right here in a second you're going to see, oh no. I was thinking that I was going to space onto the Igniter because he was farther away from everybody else. But that's generally what it is. Now, that's another situation. Right now, I have no outs. So right here, I have to just kind of play a little bit of the kite game. You saw I was staying off to the right there, where I wasn't threatened by all that much until I had a EX2 in order to silence people, making them threaten me even less, and then just playing the stay alive game until I had an out that I could use to escape. And right here I see that this Igniter, he pretty much has no outs except for that one, of course. So I want to switch him as much as possible. And there's his there's both of his outs at once. I wanted to just stay on him. Of course, the Seekers, he's having none of that, so it's really too much trouble. So really, also looking at this situation, I have my healer alive, and just so long as that happens, I have the advantage. Because whenever you're in a 2v2 and they don't have a healer, you automatically have the ability to heal, whereas they don't. And it's really just a game of attrition. If you can just stay alive, don't go in and take a whole bunch of damage. Just really just play kind of a slow damage game. And that will usually work when you get into a 2v2 situation at the end of a game. I see a lot of newer players kind of jump in and just try and do a bunch of damage, and then they just get comboed out. And the reason why that is because you use an ability in order to get into, and in order to initiate, is called, into that situation. And then you have your opponent has a one ability lead on you. Now, you see here that there's a special relationship between Harbinger and Alchemist, because when she used Deadly Injection on me, I wanted to use Nether Shift in order to avoid the damage from it. However, my Nether Shift was on cooldown. So that's something that you have to consider about Alchemist versus Harbinger, is that you don't want to use your Nether Shift when they could use Deadly Injection on you. If you see that they use it on somebody else, then that's the situation that you can be near an Alchemist when your Nether Shift is still on cooldown. That's another reason why it's actually a good idea to use Nether Shift in order to escape. Whereas your space ability, Shadow Shift, allows you to move in on somebody. So it's a continual kind of rotation of move in, move with your space, and move out with your R, if you can. Of course, naturally, there are several different situations where that's not possible, and it's really up to you in order to kind of manage which one of your cooldowns you're going to use for which situation. Here, we're seeing the typical, I spaced in, and then I used my nether shift. I suppose I've been spending this whole game to kind of sing the praises of spacing in and nether shifting out, and I think I'm realizing I haven't actually done that once in this game. So besides that, and also you see here I'm caught without my outs once again. That is another example of what you don't want to do. And that is exactly the reason why. Luckily, I actually had enough health to just completely tank all of that ultimate from then on out. And right here, I had the deadly injection on me, and not only did I put myself in nether shift when it was about to pop, but I also made sure to move away from the vanguard. If you go back to that and kind of re-watch that point, I moved up away from the vanguard when it was about to explode, because I didn't want the splash to hit the vanguard, and it will cause a weaken effect on the vanguard, and that would have caused him to do less damage to the alchemist. Of course, naturally, yeah, it doesn't really matter at that point because the alchemist was dead either way, but that's just one of those things that you kind of pay attention to. Another small thing that you kind of have to pay attention to is right then and there. I was just a little bit too close to that igniter when I was charging up the Shadow Bolt, so when his living flame came off, he knocked me back and it interrupted the casting of my Shadow Bolt. I think I actually timed that at the right moment that it would have really finished casting before he could have spaced out. I'm not entirely sure about that. I haven't really gone back into it or anything like that. And what I tend to do with Harbinger also, and I don't know if this is necessarily something that a really good Harbinger would suggest. I've only really played about less than 50 games with him. But the thing that I would like to say is that I like to use his EX2 ability, the EX of Affliction, quite a lot because it gives like a silence, and that can it does a lot to just keep somebody unable of doing anything, pretty much. You essentially put a freeze on their TPS for, how long is it? It is 2 seconds? No, it's 1 second. Sorry, it was 1 second. Okay. And here's a situation of, if one person's left, don't jump right in. You'll notice that I waited until my recovery health was completely full before spacing into that, and that I was in a position that I wanted to be in. And that's just one of those things that igniter may have been able to burst me down a little bit, unless if I had my recovery health to shield me from that. Anyway, so that's done for the first game. We're going to go into the second game right here. And here we are on the second game. We're playing against a team with a Grimrock and a Seeker in it. And of course, I'm still playing Harbinger, and we have an Astronomer. The thing about this composition is we're a bit melee heavy, and that's kind of why I was pointing out the Seeker and the Grimrock. So it's kind of going to be interesting to see that sort of thing. Now, I tend to see a lot of Vanguard spacing in, so you might have noticed that I was kind of hanging back there. I wanted to see if the Vanguard was just going to space all the way across the pillars in order to get into the midst of us, and instead of doing that, he just taunted. So I seem to be kind of attacking this Seeker here. It's kind of a good matchup, because I do have quite a bit of things that can go up against the Seeker. But for the most part, what influenced that decision was that he was mostly far away from the other players on his team, and I really just wanted to get somebody who was by himself in order to do that. And you also kind of can see that I switch between targets depending on how much recovery health they have. Like for instance, right now the Seeker has full, whereas the Vanguard has very little. And right now the Vanguard's getting even more recovery health, so I'm probably going to switch over to maybe the Grimrod right about now. Or maybe I'm just going to miss all of my abilities and not do anything. And right there you saw that I spaced. I was trying to... There is a slight moment in Harbinger's space when he's invulnerable and he doesn't take any damage. And what you can do is if you time it exactly right, you can stop the main burst damage from Seeker's ultimate. However, I've heard that it's really hard to do, and I myself, I have a kind of hard time doing it. There is a very small window in order to do it. If you want to dodge Seeker's ultimate, it's much better to use Nether Shift, but of course it was on cooldown at the time. So that's naturally something. If you're playing Seeker and you have your ultimate and you want to use it on a Harbinger, or any team that has a Harbinger rather, even if you're not using it directly on the Harbinger, you can just, you probably should wait for him to use Nether Shift so that you can't use it on whoever you put your ultimate on. And that's of course a cool little tip. Ignoring of course the little shadow bolt where I completely missed somebody who's stoned. I have no idea what happened to that. I'm gonna blame my 180 ping. That's what I'm gonna do right there. Of course, we see that the reason why I said that Seeker is kind of that actually the other way around. Harbinger is pretty good against Seeker. Is that his only escape is his blitz, really, because if he uses his illusion, you can usually predict when it's going to happen and try not to hit it with your M1. If you do hit it with your M1, you can probably just Nether Shift and walk around until you walk through him, and now you know where he is. And in the meanwhile, he can't shoot you with his fire arrow, which most people, they will illusion and then go into fire arrow. But going back to blitz, he can blitz away, but it's so short that you can usually just blood grip him back. You can just use your M2 and just blood grip him back, and now he's back in trouble again. His only option at that point is of course illusion, which we can handle that with affliction, which doesn't trigger trances, or with Nether Shift, or whatever it is you want to do. Of course, catching long range shadow bolts is also a plus, because Seekers want to keep themselves kind of in the range that is best for shadow bolts, generally, in my honest opinion. That would have been a good timing for me to notice when the Vanguard was ultimating. And honestly, that death was my bad. I was using Nether Shift in order to attack somebody who's way too far away. He did see me walking straight towards him and had plenty enough time to back off, and then time when my Nether Shift was going to end and start up a fire arrow for that exact moment. Yes, I did have space off cooldown, but I really didn't have enough time after Nether Shift in order to space out of it, so it would have been much better to use Nether Shift to escape, and then use maybe like a blood grip or an affliction in order to give myself some recovery health, and then put myself back into battle. I could have even used some shadow bolts in order to just do some general pressure. And there, finally, I spaced in, I tried to do a little bit of damage, and then when things seemed like they weren't really going my way, I just Nether Shifted out. That was it. And we can see here from what I was saying earlier that I'm just really just focusing mostly on whoever is farthest away from their teammates. I see a lot of people kind of try and figure out which one of these people should we focus 100% of our attention on no matter what. And honestly, I would like to kind of try and explain to them, but it's usually hard to say so during a match, that you just kind of want to attack whoever is least likely to be able to put up a fight. And right here you see that I have like 2 seconds until Nether Shift comes off the cooldown. So that's another situation where I kind of have to play the kite game as much as possible in order to wait for my cooldowns to pretty much save me. Because otherwise, if something happens, then I'm a little bit out of luck. You can still do damage. I'm not saying that if you don't have Nether Shift off cooldown that you can't do anything, or that you should always pretty much do absolutely nothing, just space in and then Nether Shift out. You should try to instead of just absolute rotating your cooldowns around, you can also try to determine, is this engagement that I'm in actually worth it? Am I actually going to take more damage that I'm putting out? You can see that I tank less damage than ideal, and that is always a good thing to look at the end of a game, to take together all of the damage that you've taken and make sure that it's less than the damage that you've put out. And if that happens, then you're always putting yourself into situations that are good for you. As you can see right here, I'm actually putting myself kind of in a bunch of really bad positions. I've never really landed any good hits. I've spaced onto people who then space away, or I've nether shifted into areas that I don't necessarily want to be in. And right here, I'm having an M1 fight with a Vanguard, and that nether shift was just way off of timing. So that's kind of a whole bunch of examples of what not to do. Of course, then I also did a kind of predictable EX1 on the Seeker, and that allowed him to use his trance. So as you can see, this round is going actually pretty bad for me. I'm really doing a very little, and that moment there was kind of a key, because the Astronomer was ulting, and then I used Nether Shift. That happened pretty much too close together for me to have reacted to it, but it was so key because I didn't receive any healing from the Astronomer's ultimate. So that's a couple of things that led to that defeat there. Anyway, that's all for today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.